Council of India, members of the organizing committee led ably by Dr. Ramachandra, Dr. Rabindra Naik, Hemant, my good friend Dr. Lakshmikant, members of my executive, past presidents of the Indian Orthodontic Society. I can see Dr. Jyotindra Kumar, Dr. Ashok Utreja, Dr. U.S. Krishna Naik, and my dear brothers and sisters in orthodontics. I begin this presidential address with a little story that I have to narrate. This story has its origin in Aesop's fables. This is the story that most of us would have heard as little children. It's a story about the ant and the grasshopper. The story is very simple. It goes like this. There is an ant, there is a grasshopper. They both coexist. Now in the summer, the ant is working hard because it's thinking that it's going to be winter, it's going to be difficult for me to find food in winter, it's going to be cold, so I need to make a shelter. So in the summer, the ant is always carrying food, carrying supplies to make its food, while the grasshopper is having fun. Is always playing around. He calls the ant, why don't we have a conversation? Why don't we just relax and have some chit chat? The ant says, no, I've got work to do, I've got to line up supplies for winter. Now what happens is, winter comes. The grasshopper, who's been whiling away all summer, cannot stand the cold, while the ant is cozy in its habitat, in the house that it's built for itself. It has food supplies, and the grasshopper then cannot tolerate the cold and dies. Now this is a story that probably most of us would have heard as little children. Now there is a modified, modern Indian version to it. Now what happens in the modern Indian version is, the ant works hard in the summer, has a cozy house in winter, and the grasshopper, the moment he sees there is winter, and he's shivering in winter and has no food and supplies, he immediately calls up Arnab Goswami. And Arnab Goswami then puts it on News Now, and it's a national phenomenon. The nation then wants to know, why should this grasshopper be suffering in this dying cold, while this ant is lying comfortable in its cozy habitat? Now it doesn't end there. You have Anna Hazare, Mehra Patkar, Baba Ramdev, all of whom who take chartered flights, get along with other grasshoppers, and then go on a fast demanding that grasshoppers be relocated to warmer climates during winter. Mulayam states that this is injustice against this minority of grasshoppers. Amnesty International and Kofi Annan called it that India is actually violating grasshopper rights. Obama says, bade deshon mein these choti atyachars on grasshoppers just cannot happen. The internet is flooded with petitions that if you do not support grasshopper, every single SMS you send, there will be 5 rupees donated to the grasshopper cause. The opposition MPs stage a walkout. You have the leftists who immediately want to pass a resolution saying that ants should not be allowed to work hard in summer. Otherwise, you cannot bring about equality of justice in the Indian country. Lalu Prasad then gives a requisition saying that, for these distressed grasshoppers, there should be a special grasshopper rug on the Indian railways. So, and people should be allowed to travel there free of cost. And Rahul says, प्रधानमंत्री जी आप 10 लाख का सूट पहनते हैं और ये ग्रास हॉपर बेचारे ठंडी में मर रहे हैं. मैं अपने बैंकॉक के वेकेशन से वापस नहीं आऊंगा जब तक कि ग्रास हॉपर्स को आप रीएलोकेट नहीं करो. Finally, the Judicial Commission passes an act called Putaga, Prevention of Terrorism Against Grasshoppers. Finally, for the ant is now fined, and there are retroactive taxes that are slapped on the ant for not being able to comply with the demands, and Putaga is slapped on it. So the house of the ant, all the food supplies are taken away by the government. In a ceremony that is covered by all the news channels, Anna Hazare calls it the triumph of justice, Lalu calls it socialistic justice, Kofi Annan invites the grasshopper to address the UN General Assembly. Many years later, friends, the ant has migrated because it had nothing here to the US and set up a multi-million-dollar enterprise in the Silicon Valley, while hundreds of grasshoppers still die of starvation despite all the sops and support somebody is trying to give to them. And a result of losing out on a lot of hard-working ants, India is still a developing nation, and we need to do something about it. Now, this story obviously is a very simplistic parallel. You know, we can laugh about it. It's not an exact depiction of what really happens, but what the idea that this story tried to convey is that one thing that ails progress is that we need to have a system of equal opportunity where merit is awarded. That's one. And second, why am I telling you this story? As you know, most of you are orthodontic residents. You're going to be graduating as orthodontists in the next few years. Why am I telling you a story like this? The reason is because each of us have ant moments and grasshopper moments in life. There is an ant and a grasshopper in all of us. There are people who want that the system should provide for them, while there are people who create these systems and provide for themselves. Now, all of us understand through our education in orthodontics that we've got to have our diagnostic processes right before we attempt treatment for a patient. So as we are looking at setting up our feet into the profession of orthodontics, what is it that we need to know diagnostically about what's happening on the terrain of the profession as far as orthodontics and dentistry in general is concerned? Well, now to face some hard truths. We are the producer of the largest number of orthodontists in the world. By 2017, the IOS will be the orthodontic organization in the world which will have the largest number of orthodontists. The sad part, however, is that the cost of orthodontic treatment in the private sector in a country like India, the national average is even lesser than developing economies of the Asia Pacific. I'm not even talking West here, like Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Indonesia, Philippines. The cost of having orthodontic treatment in a country like India is probably 1/4 than even these countries. It's sad but true that you can, in the metropolitan cities, hire a dentist for a salary less than that of a driver. Philanthropic funding for research is almost non-existent. The impetus for excellence in teaching as a profession is a challenge because the scope for research, promotion, salaries, there are factors there which need due consideration and probably a relook at. Also that, now this is something, because of my role with global orthodontic organizations, we did realize that 40% of our membership is spending 5 to 6 hours a day for the entire week in employment. That is, close to 1,200 odd orthodontists out of a total of 3,000 members that the IOS has. So how will the private sector grow? And if a private sector in orthodontics does not grow, and you cannot be financially successful as an orthodontist in practice, how many people will then want to be orthodontists in the future? It's an important factor that we need to address if we are looking at the growth or holistic growth of a career that we're looking at. The world has seen changing trends, sometimes resisted as far as marketing of orthodontics to people is concerned. And today there is a consensus globally that if there is a model of practice that survives in any part of the world, it is the free market economy. So am I trying to really depress you? Well, not really. If you look at it from an opportunistic perspective, only 2 to 5% of people in this country who need orthodontics are actually getting it. So there is a huge scope here. However, I come back to another point. For a country that spends only 4% of its GDP on health, if you actually equate that to the average amount of rupees spent on a single individual, the amount that the state actually spends on health for every Indian citizen is 200 rupees per citizen. And that 200 rupees is going towards cancer, tuberculosis, Ebola, everything. So do you think, from a public health perspective, there is going to be a Robin Hood who's going to come and steal from the treasury and provide employment for all of us? Sometimes in life, when we talk about hope, it's not about what we want to do, but what we ought to do. Well, India today does have the largest untapped potential of untreated orthodontic cases. The Prime Minister of this country has officially stated that by 2020, we will have the youngest and the largest employable population in the world. Now, if you look at some current orthodontic research, I mean, all of you who've been following the American Journal of Orthodontics, last month there was an excellent article about when job seekers, considering that all other parameters are equal, are evaluating a particular candidate on his ability to secure a job. Do they actually get influenced by facial appearances and the presence of malocclusion? And it was a comprehensive yes. Now that is the role that we've got to define for ourselves. In fact, last year at the Global Editors Forum, one of the editors of the AGODO, the interim editor, Dr. Dave Turpin, said 2013 was a banner year for research in orthodontics. And he was going to talk about the best articles, which he thought were banner articles, that were going to be put up, as the best defining moment of orthodontic research in 2013. And we see suddenly an article that comes up, he says, one of them is the effect of bullying in Jordanian school children. Now imagine as a member of the audience, you're thinking there's going to be some genomic research, some molecular level research that's happening. And here he talks about bullying in school children. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when we went and asked him, and the answer was, and the editorial board was pretty unanimous in their decision. They said, if we do not define the need for our profession, everything that we are going to deliver treatment is probably going to have no use at all. So when we look at it from a public health perspective, we change personalities. We also straighten teeth. According to, and if you think that the demand isn't there, now this is another statistic, according to the Invisalign Webmaster, a company that doesn't even exist in India, the third highest hits on their site are from India. There is an ever-growing, aspiring middle class which does want to aspire for orthodontics. Have we positioned ourselves correctly? Well, if you look at it, let's look at some of the big ideas that we have put forth as far as the organization or the Indian Orthodontic Society as a professional body is concerned. Friends, you are a part of a body that is the first orthodontic body in the world to have a didactic program conducted for its members on practice management and ethical marketing. That was the brainchild of my immediate past president, Dr. Joe Verghese. We've continued to do it. 5 of these programs have been held and another 4 are planned in this year, which in a schematic manner literally handholds young members to help them transition into the world of private practice, something that orthodontic education does not directly impart. Well, after the American Association of Orthodontics, IOS is going to be again the first organization to have a research foundation that will be formally launched in Hyderabad this year. This again was the brainchild of one of my predecessors, Dr. Pradeep Chandra Shetty. Now, this research foundation is actually going to be inaugurated by the top 5 editors of the top 5 global orthodontic journals. Because, there has been a huge impetus on everybody wanting to publish. Now, the theme that we gave these editors, and that is something that is going to be the focus of the editorial office of the JIS from now on as well, is these editors are going to tell us why articles get rejected. What are the focus areas that we need to concentrate on research? Because again, according to statistics, India is number 3 in the number of submissions to global PubMed indexed orthodontic journals worldwide. What we need to do is change the acceptance percentage, and we will do it on the basis of trying to up the bar and do it in a meritorious manner. Research grants for funding research will be distributed and analyzed by these global editors, so it will be an independent process. The Secretarial Office will be sending out invites for you to submit these research grants very soon. Another thing that's a feather in our cap this year, friends, the world is looking at India today. The World Federation of Orthodontics, and I would love my members to know this as well as dignitaries on the dais, has close to 100 member organizations. Once in 5 years, it hosts its annual conference. This year in London, at the World Federation of Orthodontics Annual Congress, there are only 4 national societies that have been invited to run a half-day scientific program of their own. iOS is one of them and has the largest program that we are running. And something else that I would actually like to take another 30 seconds to digress and say, Dr. N.R. Krishnaswamy, all of us have revered the gentleman, can walk into any scientific program, any part of the world on his own, was, when I finally negotiated for that program, we appointed Dr. N.R. Krishnaswamy as the chair for the World Village Day iOS event. And every other World Village Day event, the chair has put themselves onto the program as one of the speakers, because obviously it's a huge honor to be speaking at the WFO. Dr. N.R. Krishnaswamy called me and said, Niklesh, I have already been invited as a guest to the conference. I have spoken. It's time that I give this opportunity to another young upcoming speaker, because that will really push a whole lot of us on the world stage. There was a time when there used to be 1 Indian, 2 Indian at global orthodontic podiums. Today, the dream that I have is like the Koreans, like the Japanese, like the Taiwanese. If any orthodontic society plans a conference, an Indian should be on the program, because that's where we are on the global standards. We've upped the ante, friends, on scientific activity within the organization itself. It's like, when you're going to go play the World Cup, you've got to make sure that your Ranji system produces the best. The Council on Scientific Affairs and the Council of Educators, these bodies that have been ratified by the Constitution this year, are in a dedicated manner looking at running the scientific affairs of the society from a holistic global perspective, and will be representing the society to various organizations as and when the time comes. As an Indian who is also the president of the Asian Pacific Orthodontic Federation, well, this is a promise that before I finish my tenure as the APOS president, an opportunity that I always found, a lot of our clinicians who excel, wanted to say, I'm an IBO diplomate, but I want to be an ABO diplomate or an American board diplomate, which you cannot be because we do not have a degree or a master's program that we've done in that country. So there was a need for Asia to have its own qualifying specialty board, and that will be a reality before the end of this year. Another announcement, which was a surprise, which nobody knows about, is that the student winners at this year's PG convention, there is going to be an Asian Pacific Orthodontic Students Resident Forum in Taiwan, Taichung, later on in the year. And the winners for this PG convention, who will be invited to present there in Taichung, their registration for the Taichung conference will be taken care of by the Indian Orthodontic Society, because that's what we want to do is when we are looking at excellence. We've tried to create a concept on branding. There is an iOS Smile Shoppy that we've got with branded iOS gifts with the Smile Torch logo, so that we can project ourselves as ambassadors of the organization in every little way. And finally, the Smile Torch. Friends, as a group of professionals, orthodontists have always been excellers. So that's the only way forward. We cannot be grasshoppers. We cannot look at a system which is already overburdened to provide modes for excellence for us. We have to seek them within ourselves and create these opportunities. For a awareness project like the Smile Torch, which is running 300 days consecutively, if you were to ask the West, they would run a budget of millions and millions of dollars. Not a single rupee has been spent by the iOS on this project, because when we get together, hold hands for a common cause, the world sees that magic can happen. The world acknowledges that yes, we are the smile keepers to the nation. We started with a theme in Kolkata, and the theme for the year is Dare to Dream. Ladies and gentlemen, my message to the tomorrow of Indian orthodontics is dream, dream big. No dream is too small. And we know magic can happen. As I end, I would like to quote something that my mother would narrate to me. She's not with me in physical presence anymore, but has graduated to being my guardian angel. This was a little poem that we once read, which said, "हो गई है पीर, पर्वत से पिघलनी चाहिए, इस हिमालय से आज कोई गंगा निकलनी चाहिए। अब दिख रहा है कि ये दीवारें पर्दों की तरह हिल रही हैं, शर्त ये है कि बुनियाद हिलनी चाहिए। सिर्फ हंगामा खड़ा करना मेरा मकसद नहीं, सिर्फ हंगामा खड़ा करना मेरा मकसद नहीं, मेरी कोशिश है ये कि ये सूरत बदलनी चाहिए। हो तेरे दिल में या मेरे दिल में सही, ये आग हो कहीं पर आग जलनी चाहिए। May the flame in our smile torch, ladies and gentlemen, ignite our golden jubilee as well as the years to come with excellence for our profession and our patients for times immemorial. Thank you so much.